Hello, my name is Nick, and today I'll be doing a tutorial over Kerbal Space Program. If you do not know what Kerbal Space Program is, it's a game where you can build rockets and you can launch them and you can get them out of the atmosphere and put them in space and land on other celestial bodies. And you can make planes to fly over Kerbin, which is this planet. It's the home planet of the Kermans, which is the alien beings you can control. And you can maybe even get those planes out of the atmosphere if you do some clever thinking. That's just some basic things. You can do a lot more in this game. But for now, we're going to focus on what this tutorial is going to be on, which is more oriented to the people who have just got the game. Basically, this is going to cover your first flight. So without further ado, we shall start the game by clicking Start Game. Now, you'll be taken to 5 options. Resume save, which is if you have made a save file already, you can click this and resume that save file. Training, which is basically the tutorial section, although it has 4 tutorials that don't even cover the bare bones when you're really looking at it. Scenarios, which is where you can put your knowledge to the test. Back, which takes you back to the main menu, and Start New, which is where we'll be clicking. This will basically generate a new file. Now, under Game Mode, it'll be set to Career Mode by default. Basically, in Career Mode, you start out with a very small selection of parts, and you have to do some research and earn science, and with that science, you can unlock more parts. This mode is basically still under development. And for this tutorial, I'll be doing this in sandbox mode. Basically, you don't need science. Everything's unlocked from the start. You're free to play with this. Now right here we have player name, which I highlighted it, and we'll press backspace because this will be the name of our file. And I'll be calling it tutorial. Okay, now over here under our flag, by default, it's set to default. So we're going to change the orbit and press accept. Basically click the flag and you're able to change your flag. And now that we've selected sandbox, named our file, which doesn't matter in the long run, and picked our flag, which also doesn't matter in the long run, we shall click start to create this new file. And I'll be loading up the Space Center now. One thing to mention, you're probably thinking if you're playing this game, why is there an alarm clock here over your spaceplane hangar? This isn't in my game. Well, you see, this is not a stock install of Kerbal Space Program, although I will not be using any of the mods in this series of tutorials unless the tutorial has to do with that specific mod. So basically, we'll be going over first the 2 areas we'll be using for this tutorial. The launch pad, which is where you'll be launching your rockets from, and the vehicle assembly building, which is where you'll be building your rocket. So, I'm going to click the vehicle assembly building, and it's going to load. And now we're inside the vehicle assembly building. Now, the first thing you'll notice is this array of parts under the pods tab. Basically, this is everything, every single way you can command your spaceship from. I'm going to say right now, manned missions are a bit easier than unmanned missions, which is why I suggest use these parts. If it's your very first flight, I suggest either the Mark 1 lander can or the Command Pod Mark 1. For this tutorial, I'll be using the Command Pod Mark 1, because if they ever incorporate the Deadly Reentry mod, because they have incorporated other mods into the game, then this tutorial will still be valid, hopefully by then, because the Command Pod Mark 1 has a heat shield on it. So basically we click it and it'll be set in the middle of our vehicle assembly building area. Now the first thing you should probably focus on is when it's coming back to Kerbin, which is the planet we're on right now, how is it going to slow down and not crash into the surface? Basically, your solution, you can either work out a complicated rocketry system, or you can click the utility tab, go over to the second and slide, and look at the various parachutes. In fact, the parachute I suggest you use for the Command Pod Mark 1 is the Mark 16 parachute, because it's good and it fits perfectly over the top. So basically, in order to select it, you just click the part. You don't need to hold down the mouse button, just click it, move it over here, and put on the top, and wait for it to snap to the top and turn green, like this. When it's done that, click, and your part's now attached. Now, another thing you have to think about is there's going to be rockets under this, and when it's done, I don't want it to be attached to this, because at that point it's just dead weight. How do we get rid of it? Well, simple. You go into the structural tab, which is this tab with the crane in it, go over to the second slide, and you'll be able to find a various amount of decouplers, which are meant to detach parts of your rocket. For this one, I'll be using the TR18A stack decoupler. So just click it, move it under the capsule, and wait for it to snap and turn green, and then click it. Under this, we'll be putting our stage that's going to be mainly operating in space, which is rather important. Because if we're up there in orbit and we have no fuel and no rockets, how are we going to get down? He'll just be stranded there forever. So basically, to solve this problem, we're going to put a stage underneath this that will be operating in space. So go to your propulsion tab, head over to the second page, and then underneath this, I'll be putting the FLT 400 fuel tank, because I feel like it has a rather well-rounded amount of fuel to power this in space, especially concerning the engine. So click that and put it under our decoupler. And now, basically, there are 4 engines that will fit the diameter of this. Like, this engine will fit the diameter of this perfectly. Meanwhile, this engine is too big, and this engine's just tiny. See? And then this one's mounted radially, but it's just huge, so we're not going to use that either. Of these 4 engines, I'm going to suggest to you the LV909 liquid fuel engine, because it has a good amount of thrust and it's rather efficient. So we're going to click that and put it under this fuel tank. Now, we're going to put a lava rocket underneath this, but as you can see, we are sort of getting close to the floor. So what we're going to do, we're going to click the command pod, which selects every part of the rocket, and scroll upwards. And now we have more room to play with. So basically, underneath this, we're going to put our ascent stage, which will put us in space. So we're going to go back to structural, grab a decoupler, put it under this, and before doing anything, we're going to go to control and pick the inline advanced stabilizer. This will basically help us control our rocket when it's huge. So we're going to take this and we're going to put it under the decoupler. And now, if you probably don't know, it takes a lot of rocket to put something into space. So how we're going to put a lot of rocket on this? Well, it's simple. You can either do something long and rather unstable, or you can do as I'm doing, which is go to structural, go to the last tab. Well, actually, no, it's still on the last tab. And then you're going to be using the TVR 1180C Mark I stack tricoupler. Basically, as I can demonstrate here, it goes from one area put tubular parts like this, tubular, into 3 areas of the same size. So underneath this, we're gonna put some rockets and fuel underneath. So we're gonna head over to the propulsion tab again, and we're gonna head to the second page, and instead of using the FLT 400, we're gonna be using the FLT 800, which has twice the fuel. So we're gonna take that, I'm gonna put it on here. Now, as you can see, it's only connecting to one of them. We can solve that. If we can by clicking this or pressing X on your keyboard, you're able to turn it ×2 symmetry. If you press X again, ×3, in which, behold, it attaches it 3 times and symmetrically. So place it there, and underneath that, we're going to be putting in FLT 400 because we sort of need the little bit of extra fuel. And underneath this, we need an engine that's powerful, an engine that's able to lift it up. So we're going to be using the strongest out of the 4 engines, the LVT 30. So we just click that, and simply attach it underneath these fuel stacks. Again, this is all under ×3 symmetry. And now, if you're very, very careful about your fuel consumption, this can get you to space, although since you're a beginner, you may not be as careful when it comes to fuel consumption, so I'm going to give you a little extra boost. So we're going to go structural, going to head back to the slide with the decouplers on it, and we're going to grab the TT38K radial decoupler. Basically what you do is that you take this, and this is also on 3 symmetry, and you put it on the side of your rocket. So you're able to add rockets on the side of your rocket. Now, before we continue, since we're still on the structural tab, if we're put on what I'm going to put on next and then launch it, which is basically the bare minimum, these are going to wobble around. So in order to prevent that, on the first page of the structural tab, you'll have the EAS4 strut connector. This is what I consider space duct tape. This will prevent your rocket from wobbling. If there's a part that wobbles and you don't want it to wobble, just put some struts on it. So again, this is on 3 symmetry. Connect, put a strut here, and connect it here. Again, no dragging for this part. So now we're going to head over to the propulsion tab and get, not a liquid fuel booster, but an RT10 solid fuel booster. I guess now will be a pretty good time to explain the difference between solid fuel and liquid fuel. Basically, solid fuel is more powerful typically in the atmosphere, typically. Although, once they're lit, they cannot be stopped until all the solid fuel has been wasted. Meanwhile, for rockets, they are typically more powerful in a vacuum, typically, and they can be started and stopped whenever you want. But this is going to be our very first set of rockets that goes off, and we don't want them to stop. So we're going to use this. So we just select it and put on the decouplers as evenly as possible, which you don't need to do this, but the OCD part of me tells me to do this, so I'm going to do it. And if we look up, perfect. And now you basically have a space-worthy craft. This is going to be able to get your Kerbal into space and bring him back. Although, I want to make this a bit better, and by that I mean I want it to look cooler and put a lot of swag on it. I don't really like using the word swag, so I couldn't find a better word. So basically, we're going to make it look better and make it slightly easier to control. So we're going to head to aerodynamics, back in this tab, and we're going to head to the second page. We're able to find some winglets. I'm going to take this, and this is also on ×3 symmetry. We're going to put it on the side of this tank about right here. And then we place it. And then we're going to do another thing, do it again, except on this side. So basically, steadily attach that. And then, still in the aerodynamics tab, on the first page, you'll be able to find the aerodynamic nose cone. Click it, and put it on top of your solid fuel boosters. Again, using 3 symmetry. And then, beneath that, we're going to put the AVT1 winglet. This basically keeps your rocket pointing straight up. And since at this point we want it to point straight up, we're going to put on there. And now, basically, when we get up, we need power. So we're going to go to Utility, and we're going to use the OX4W 2x3 panels. This basically uses sun power to generate electricity. So with 2 symmetry, we're going to put these on the decoupler, like that. And now, what if we're on the dark side? Well, then you can use this. This basically generates power at a slower rate, although it can work day and night. So basically, with 4 symmetry this time, I'm going to press S to rotate the part towards pointing upwards, and then I'm going to select it. And then basically you're done. Now, all we have to do is save it and then launch it. Basically, to save your craft, well, first you want to name it. For this, I'm going to name it First, because it's our first spaceship. And to save it, simply go over to this tab. Not the area where you got all your parts, but on these buttons over here, and click the one with the floppy disk that says Save. Click it, and your rocket's saved. If you press the load button, there's our rocket. A bunch of stock crafts, which I believe only like 2 of them actually are space worthy. So basically, with this, we shall now go out to the launch pad by clicking the launch button. Now we wait for it as it loads our rocket. And now this is where I shall get into the controls of flight in Kerbal Space Program. Basically, to pitch, you can press W and S. S being pitch up and W being pitch down. Yaw is D and A. A, which allows D yaw's right, A yaw's left. Basically, pitch, you see this blue ball in the middle? That's where you'll be doing all your movement relative to this. S is pitch up, meaning if you press S, it will move the spacecraft toward this direction. W will move it this direction. A will move it this direction. D will move it this direction. A will move it this direction, and Q and E will roll the rocket, which makes it spin, counterclockwise or counterclockwise. T activates your SAS, which allows you to be more stable while flying. Shift makes you throttle upwards. Control makes you throttle downwards, and X is kill throttle. Okay, so we want to go to space, so what we're going to do, we're going to pull our throttle up to max, hit SAS on. Now, another thing about solid rocket boosters is that when they are ignited, they will, no matter what, be at full blast. So, and considering the only rockets on our first stage is the solid fuel boosters, we don't really need our throttle up. I prefer you keep it up for later on. So I'm going to press space, which is stage. So blast off in 3, 2, 1. And now we are heading up. Now until we reach 10,000 meters, you'll want to be going straight up and try to stay as close to 1,000 meters. Close to 150 meters per second. You can go above it, but just don't go under it. And as you can see, even if I adjust my throttle, they won't stop going unless it's at max throttle. Now you see here, solid boosters are done, so I press spacebar to detach them, and press spacebar to activate our liquid fuel engines. So now we'll be able to control how fast we go. So basically, we're going to keep it around as close to 150 meters a second. Basically, we can go over that, but anything over 200 meters a second is just wasting fuel. This is how I launch all my rockets, and most of my missions are a success when I play this game, so I suggest you use this method. Because this is just to save fuel, mainly. And so we can use the stage in part of our orbiting maneuver. Anyway, so we're now at about 9,000 meters, so 9 kilometers. And when we get to 10,000 meters, we're going to go full throttle, and we're going to yaw over to 90 degrees on your nav ball. If you look at the nav ball, you'll be able to see 90 degrees. So we're going to head over here, and then we're going to press T. All of that was done with SAS off because it sort of restricts your movement if you have SAS on. So when I ever return, this is out of habit of playing older versions of the game mainly, but it's just still, it feels better when you have SAS off when you're turning. It just feels like it was better. Now from this point on, we're going to control from the map view. First of all, we're going to pull up our nav ball, and you see that? That's the highest point in our orbit, the apoapsis. We want to get that at about 100 and then stop burning. And press X to stop burning your rockets, because this is liquid fuel boosters, and so we can control their throttle. And now we're about 101 kilometers as our apoapsis. By the way, if you didn't know, kilometers is 1,000 meters, basically. I'm so used to saying kilometers. We're now in orbital trajectory. We're going to be having about a 101 kilometer apoapsis, and now that we're out of the thick part of the atmosphere, which you can tell which part of the atmosphere you're in by using this, we can turn off SAS, and then we're able to go upwards, 69. And once we're at 70 kilometers, we're in space. Now, one of the first things I want you to do is open your panels by right-clicking on the panels and press the button that says Extend Panels, like so. And then, another thing that you may want to do is that you may want to put this in orbit. So in order to do that, go to the map mode, which you can access by pressing M, and find your apoapsis and click it so you can create a maneuver node. Basically, this is what this do. This will make you move forward in terms of your orbital path. This will make you burn backwards in terms of your path. This will make you towards the sphere of influence that you're in. This will make you burn away towards the sphere of influence you're in. And this will make you burn downwards in terms of your orbital path, and this one will make you burn upwards in terms of your orbital path. If you want to make orbit, use this and go outwards until you have a periapsis that's above 70 kilometers. Try to circularize it in one burn. 102 and 101. That's a very good. I need to English. Okay. So now you see that little blue marker? Our nav ball. Right here, there's a blue marker. By the way, to pause the game, you press the ESC button. You want to align yourself with that blue marker, because with that blue marker, that's where you need to burn for that maneuver. Now, if you look over here, it'll say that you don't need to burn until 30 seconds. But if you're ever doing a burn, I'd like to suggest you do what's known as a 50-50 burn, which basically you do about half the burn before the node, and about half the burn after the node. So I'm gonna move it over here, and I'm gonna cheat by using time acceleration. By the way, in order to use time acceleration, period is time accelerate faster, and comma is time accelerate slower. You could go no slower than 1 times normal speed. I'm gonna roll. And I'm gonna burn now. This is not a 50-50 burn exactly, since I'm a bit late for that 50-50, for it to be a 50-50 burn. And now we're center out. We're going to press spacebar to detach that module. I'm going to press space again to use the smaller module, the in space module. And now we're making our burn. And we're going to continue burning. This is not a 50-50 burn at all. I'm sorry, but this is the best I can do. If it's not 50 burn exactly, just don't slow over it. As long as you get into orbit, it's alright. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. X, and you'll see you have 17 meters a second to go. So just align yourself up and start burning slowly. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then close your fuel consumption. 2, 1. Okay, 0 meters a second. 86, 118. So we're gonna. Okay, but you're in. That isn't exactly circularized, but you're in orbit. Next, I'm going to show you how to do circularized burn. So we go over here, and since our periapsis is the one that's slower, I'm going to head to our apoapsis. By the way, periapsis is the lowest part of your orbit if you want to know. Right to our apoapsis. Click that part of the orbit, click Add Maneuver, and we're going to burn forward until eventually about there, 119, 118. Can we make that any more perfect? 118, 118. Okay. And let's say we'll need about 1 second of earning time with the LV909 engine. So basically we're going to spin around a little bit until we find it. And it says we'll need to wait 22 minutes and 20 seconds until we get there. Although we're not going to wait that long because we have time acceleration. So line yourself up with the node and then press the period key to time accelerate forward. At this altitude you can time accelerate to about 50 times regular time. And comma is to slow down time acceleration to a minimum of 1 times regular time. So basically I'm going to time accelerate till about under a minute is left. 13, 12, 11, 10. So yeah. But in other words, besides this, you're in space and you're in a stable orbit. So yeah, 4, 3, 2, 1. And okay. Now is where you take your final preparations for this burn, where you align yourself with the node marker. Time accelerate a little bit more at 5 times acceleration. 12, 11, 10. And I'm going to burn at the slowest set as some of the slowest speeds right here because I want to do this almost exactly. 10. Is that a perfect 118? 118? That's perfect. That is some of the most perfect burning I've ever done. And so now we're in space and we're at a stable orbit. All we can do now is, well, one thing we can do now is turn it to where the window on our capsule is facing, sort of, the planet, so we can have our Kerman view it. If you didn't know where the window is on your capsule, for this capsule, it varies on your capsule. It's that little square right there. Right there. If you want to see from the view of your Kerbal, which this one's Jebediah Kerman, you can either press IVA on his picture, or you can press C, and you're inside the cockpit, which you can adjust your throttle by clicking this, although I really don't want to, because we're storing a stable orbit. And if you look out the window, you can see Kerbal right beneath us. To access this view, you have to press C, which is why you use C to enter this view. And how about, let's go on a spacewalk. How about that? I'm going to line myself up real quick. Now to do a spacewalk, press this button that says EVA, and you're out of the capsule. Basically, WASD controls where he moves. Press D to climb down, and he's drifting in space. What do? You press R, and you activate his RCS pack. Basically, controls are the same as if you were flying a rocket, except shift is thrust upwards, and control is thrust downwards. L will turn on your light, which allows you to see better things on the dark side. Look at that nice little spaceship. We built it. You and me, son. You and me versus the universe. Hear that? Hear that? Just you and me against the universe. And you're floating away from your spaceship. You should probably head back. A little hint for this. Don't, hold down a button. Just do everything in small little puffs. Like small little puffs of movement. Otherwise, if you don't, it's very easy to lose control. Fly off into space. And yes, he does have a limited amount of monopropellant, which is the fuel. And we got back in our capsule. Okay, so we flew around. Okay, so we got into space. We created an orbit. We've took a spacewalk. And we have been in orbit for a while. And that's about as much as we can do. So all that's left now is to return home. Home. Okay? So our goal now is to bring Jebediah Kerman back home from his orbit above Kerbal. So what we're going to do is that we're going to make a deorbiting burn. Now, For the sake of me being neat, I'm gonna have to burn from the periapsis, which, because of how even they are, it doesn't matter. Now, what many people may think is that in order to get back from space, just burn towards Earth, or Kerbin in this case. So I'm gonna show that isn't exactly the case. So I'm gonna pull this towards Kerbin. Basically, if I use this, it will make it to where I'll burn towards Kerbin. Watch as my periapsis. I'm gonna try put it at about 20 kilometers. Yeah, 20 kilometers, and it requires 2 minutes and 3 seconds of burn. That is not the most efficient way. If I get rid of that maneuver and place a new maneuver down, I burn retrograde. As soon as I select the periapsis thing. And if I move it towards retrograde, as I'm demonstrating right here, I'll have, in order to get to, again, about 20 kilometers, my periapsis is about 20 kilometers, it requires 29 seconds to burn. So yeah, it's obvious that you have to burn backwards. Now, for this, I'm going to put myself at a periapsis about 10 kilometers. This is more or less a thing I like. I don't usually just burn until there's no periapsis. I just put a very low periapsis. Because NASA just doesn't burn until, hey look, we don't have an orbital path anymore unless I decide to fly through Earth. Yeah, so basically we have 29 minutes and 30 seconds until you have to burn. So I'm going to time accelerate, again by using the period key to time accelerate forward, and the comma key to time accelerate backwards. Anyway, we are going to deorbit. We're going to return the spacecraft home, and Jebediah is going to be happy. Okay, I'm not going to do that. Jebediah is going to be happy about it. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 minute. Okay, 32. Again, 50-50 burn. I'm going to try redeem myself with a better 50-50 burn, so I'm going to start this at 16 seconds. So I'm going to activate my SAS for stable burn. 20. And as soon as it gets to 16 seconds, I'm going to throttle up and burn the opposite direction. 1. Okay, so we have 1.8 kilometers. I mean, not kilometers, meters per second. 5, 4, 3, 2. What's our periapsis? About the same. So basically, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to align myself with the periapsis, and I'm going to time accelerate so I'm about very low in space. So about 70 kilometers, in the 70s of kilometers. If I can time travel to the 70s, I'm not sure if I would want to go to 70s specifically. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so now we're inside the atmosphere. In a very thin layer of it, but we're still in the atmosphere. So we're going to align ourselves, and I'm going to press spacebar, and now we're detached from the main service module. So wave goodbye to it, because we're not going to be seeing it again. It'll just crash into the surface. If it was real life, it would actually burn up the atmosphere. Anyway, so now we're going to use period to time accelerate forward. Actually, I think it'd be good to show something on our map. It's now 8 meters. We're essentially doing a very, not exactly an aerobrake, but a form of an aerobrake. We're basically using the atmosphere to decrease the height of our orbit. Air braking's more or less commonly used in this game through interplanetary quests, like trips to Duna and Joule. Not really Joule, but sometimes I've seen some interesting Joule air brakes. So about 52 kilometers will be inside a thicker part of the atmosphere. Here, as we can see, our periapsis is dropping even faster now. And in fact, if I actually move my capsule a little, that's too much. That's too much. A little bit. You can see that if I can show you the way. That it starts tumbling a little bit. And if I align it more or less towards the retrograde, it'll start moving pointing towards retrograde. Essentially, it's the more dense part, which is the bottom of the capsule, is being aligned towards the direction, which is why the bottom of the capsules of spaceships and the space shuttle are covered with heat plating and not the rest of it, because that's the only part it needs heat plating. Because aerodynamically, it'll be pointing away from where it's going during re-entry. So, we're going down, and we are hitting sort of back. We're actually about to hit a very dense part of the atmosphere, which I will show you something that I do enjoy during my re-entries, during the entries of various atmospheres in Kerbal Space Program. Which is, as soon as we'll get to it, in fact, I'll time accelerate towards it. And stop the thing with the thing. In the thicker part of the atmosphere, we'll start seeing some red effects and then as you get thicker into the atmosphere, it'll become more evident, and suddenly you'll have red stuff flying by your capsule. Essentially, your capsule's experiencing shock heating, where essentially you're going so fast that air is exploding when it comes in contact with your capsule. And that's why you need heat shields on your spaceships. Otherwise, they'll just burn up the atmosphere. And as you can see, we see a very faint glint, and if we look carefully, if we haven't missed it yet, you may be able to see some solar panels breaking off. Anyway, so as the shocking continues and sort of ends, and this is some of the bad example. We're about to land in a very mountainous region, meaning we should open our parachute now, right after shocking. If you're landing basically, if you're using your parachute and you're landing in an area has a very high elevation, that seems like it has a very high elevation for safety purposes, deploy your chute almost as soon as you can after shock heating ends. If it looks like a lower area, wait until about when your speed reaches below 500 meters a second. If you're going in for a splashdown, then deploy your chute after your speed goes below 150 meters a second. Now here's something that I'm not sure if they fixed yet, but I still suggest you do this. Do not time accelerate when your parachute's semi-deployed, which is the state it is in right now. Because there's something at least in the earlier versions of the game, where if you time accelerated when your parachute is semi-deployed and it deploys during that time acceleration moment, it just deployed fully right now. If it deployed fully during a moment when you're time accelerating, the parachute will actually be ripped off from your capsule. And then you'll plummet to your death, and you just went to space. I don't think that'll be a happy ending to your space travels. Anyway, man, the capsule's torque is a lot stronger. Longer than I realized. Learn something new every day, and we're landing on the bottom of a mountain. Well, actually, not the exact bottom, but no, I guess you can call that a part of the mountain. Anyway, basically, this parachute will open and fully deployed 500 meters from contact with the surface. Yes, which is actually a very good indicator of how close you are. So anyway, we're about to impact in 3, 2, 1, go, and we fell over. And now we're rolling. Well, here's your carnival ride. Thank you for riding at Kerbal Space Airline. Wait, is an airline. Never mind. I'm gonna try to see if I can flip it over. And aha! Huzzah! Right now I'm basically trying to flip it over. Basically trying to flip it over. I won't be surprised if I end up wasting all my electricity trying to flip it over. Yes! I flipped it over. Let's pretend it landed like that. And so what we can do now, you can do an EVA here. Let's go. And walk around. By the way, in order to run, hold shift. And you can go out. You can right click him. And you can do the option to plant a flag. So I'm going to name the site Mountain 1. Because this is where I landed my first mission in my tutorial world. Anyway, press OK. By the way, if you want to find out what biome you're in, it's very easy. Just right-click your Kerbal and then select either EVA report or take surface sample. This is very important if you're playing in career mode because that is what gives you science. Although it's useless in sandbox mode because there is no science to be done. So yeah, you just returned home. So what I suggest you do is get back in your capsule. And then up here, there's a little option that allows you to recover your vessel. You'll click that, and your flight is done. You have successfully recovered your vessel from a successful spaceflight. So, what can you do now? Well, maybe you can build a new rocket design, deviating from the design I showed you, or maybe even use a completely different design. And maybe even try to go other places. For now, you have just completed an orbital flight. I hope this tutorial is helpful. Right here, you can in the tracking sandwiches where you can select missions and objects in space, you can see that we have a flag on a mountain. So yeah, my name is Nick. I hope this tutorial has been very helpful for you. I suggest everyone and watching this, please have a pleasant night or a pleasant day. And thank you for watching.